All right, everyone, welcome back to Stacking the Deck. I'm your host, Edward Chalupa, here with our host, Easton Evans. And today we're joined by Johnny Dunn, a.k.a. Moldy Potions.
The legend.
The legend, the man, the myth. Moldy, I'm going to let you introduce yourself.
We want all the accolades.
Tell us your life story. You got 30 seconds.
Well, it all started 35 years ago in a small town in Pennsylvania.
Yeah. Cue the Ken Burns music.
Yeah.
With some banjo picking or something. So yeah, I'm Johnny, or Moldy, as some of you guys know me. I've been into card games and just games in general since I was a kid, and played a lot, especially when Magic was doing their like Pro Tour circuits and stuff. I was really into that, and that kind of like cracked me into the card community. And now I just follow card games because I really like them. And MetaZoo obviously caught a lot of my attention last year or 2 years ago. And my brother and I decided to start up a content channel called Meta Bros, where we were breaking down the game and doing like almost daily gameplay videos for quite a while. I think we got a couple hundred videos total between our channel Fireball picked us up at one point, and then we were doing Caster Society. I think all in all, we've done about 350 videos for MetaZoo, which was a lot of work and honestly a lot of fun. Like, it definitely, there were times it was work, but it always was worth it just to see how much people appreciate like good gameplay content. Not to toot our own horn, but that was our thing going into it, was like, let's have high quality and let's keep it casual so that we're hanging out and people feel like they're our friends, you know, because let's be real, that's what all gamers want. That's what I want. We all just want to have friends, you know, who you like check in with every day. And so we did that, and I ended up making a lot of friends in the card community through that, going to conventions, meeting you guys, and we even played some tournaments together and stuff. Hopefully we can get back to doing some more of that.
I can't wait.
I met these guys and met other people and ended up hooking up with some artists in a professional sense, not just like hooking up with them. And
hey now,
got a thing for artists. And we ended up working on a game for like the past year. And so we just launched our Kickstarter February for the game called Nom Nom Verse. And Victor Larson is the main artist. You might recognize him, but those of you who've been kind of following the MetaZoo world, you'll recognize several of the artists on board, people from the community and other artists who we met through there. And yeah, it was a success. We closed out at 250K with the Kickstarter campaign. So yeehaw and stuff. Now we are into like the real production and just trying to hit our dates. And really, to wrap up here, I'm really excited to see people play the game. We have it online, so we've got people starting to play it, but I grew up in a game store basically. So my dream is seeing people in the game stores playing it, you know, in person.
And we're here to talk a little bit about that.
Yeah.
For Nom Nom. So, you know, it was a lot of fun playing cards with you through the MetaZoo days. Again, I always say I don't want this to become like the MetaZoo, you know, memories podcast, but that's really kind of like
name.
Yeah. MetaZoo traumas. No, hey, listen, we all got to meet each other, and for that's like the best gift that, you know, any game can offer anybody.
Exactly.
I choose to focus a little bit more maybe on the positives out of it. And there's so many communities that have sort of, you know, branched out from what was just this, you know, weird little cryptid game.
Yeah.
You know, when I'm thinking about, you know, where you've sort of your trajectory, and I want to touch a little bit on the content side of things too. What drove you to, have you always been kind of producing content? Like what made you start producing Meta Bros?
Oh yeah, that's a good question. I guess the short answer is yes. We've always kind of made content in one form or another. You know, if we could just scroll back through like all the videos that my brother and I have made in our lives, it would all start with like kung fu videos when we were like 4, 5, 6 years old. You know, like, I remember my first acting job was in one of my bros' videos, and I got to play the serial ninja, who to me was the coolest role ever as a 5-year-old. I got to put on like his karate gi, and then we made like a ninja mask for me, and he was selling a cereal. It was like a school project, and he's like, "Get your ninja bites," and he's like trying to sell the cereal. And the idea was that while he's trying to sell it, I just start attacking him and just like try to kill my brother. And that was the goal, was that he like dies while he's trying to sell the ninja product, because nobody can know about the ninja cereal, or so, that was like
Yeah.
big idea, and from then on it was just like constant. We were obsessed with Jackie Chan movies, Bruce Lee stuff, so we filmed all our own stuff. And none of it's like really any that good, but it's pretty hilarious. Like doing like fake dubs so that when we talk,
Yeah.
like doing
like Kung Pao, Enter the Fists. I don't even see it.
Yeah.
totally those types of vibes. So we were always into film and video, and he actually he doesn't talk about it very much, but he was an actor for a while. And you can watch a movie out there, like a legit movie, indie film starring my brother, called Chandler Hall. Here's a little plug. And you can just go watch my brother like scream cry, because it's a teenage like drama angst movie where he's kind of losing himself throughout the plot of this thing. It's just watching my brother.
I need to check it out.
Yeah, like how much he cares about,
should-
his presentation and how he looks, and he doesn't like to talk too much about Chandler Hall.
You should have like had him act like that when you were rule striking him on those videos. Like you should have.
Yeah, well, there were videos where we'd be filming, and I haven't really said this before, but yeah, a little backstage. We would be filming, and if his mood was off, or if I really crushed him, like we played a game and it was like a 3-minute win for me, he would just like turn it off and be like, "We're not posting that." I'm like, "No, we are posting that. Like that is gold. We have to post it." And he's like, "Nope, that one, nope." And some of them he would like not only hit stop, but like delete the film. So like it was gone. Like the episode was never going up again.
Turn off the N64.
I mean, let's touch a little bit on that too, though, right? So when you think about TCGs, and this is like, this is a little bit like in the psychology of it all. It's kind of weird, but there's no other game format that you literally, in an ideal situation, you sit face to face with a stranger. I mean, in this case, it's your brother, you know him, but you sit face to face from a stranger, and to be able to sit there and cook somebody or be cooked and try to keep your composure without just totally just raging.
Yeah.
And it's like, gotta be a good sport. It's just a really unique thing, because again, you're locked in it for like, the better part of an hour most of the time.
Yeah.
And it's like it's this weird dopamine center of your brain. You're like, okay, well, if I do this, then I can get out of this, and then I maybe this happens. There's so many decision tree options, and it all comes down to this weird, like, again, this interaction with a stranger. I always thought that was really fascinating, because in no other world, and this is a general observation, like guys typically, like, they don't hang out unless if there's like a reason to. So
Right.
whether it's like, hey, let's hang out and drink beer or do this. For trading card games, it's like it's a reason just to like get guys in a room with one thing in common.
Yeah.
And then try not to kill each other, because that's the other basic instinct.
Yeah. Especially if it's like the same person.
Yeah, don't hate everybody by the end of the night,
Yeah, but then you build fellowship and it's all good, and then next thing you're like, see you next week. So that's always what I liked about it.
Mm-hmm.
Me too. I love that about it. And yeah, like, to give my brother credit, I mean, look, just being real, I practice strategy and cards a lot more than him. I take it much more seriously, which is why I go to the tournaments and stuff like that with you guys. I always have. I've always been that dorky kid who, like, you could read me the flavor text of a Magic card, and I'd be like, "Oh, it's murder." Like, I would just like, "Oh yeah." I just knew it. Just my brain just loved it. Just
Actually,
yeah. So I don't blame him, for getting over it a few episodes. And he would joke, like, he feels like he's the heel, like in wrestling, the guy who's like hired to lose. Just he's like, I feel like I am. But he held it up, man. He always was in a good mood. And if he wasn't, the episode got deleted.
Well, so it wouldn't be fun though if it was two spikes playing just to win, right?
Yeah.
Like, I even feel bad. Like, gosh, I'm such like a maybe older brother. I had a little sister, and growing up, or I'll just say this about my wife too, where it's like, sometimes I do things, and the only reason why I do them is because I like it gets a rise out of her, and that
Right.
to me that's just like, oh, okay, I'm pushing the buttons.
Yeah.
So that's kind of what, but that's what makes life interesting. That's what makes the dynamic fun. That's why people I think really liked Meta Bros to some extent. Of course, learning and stuff, but anybody can really like watch people play cards. It doesn't have to be MetaZoo, it could be Magic or whatever, but there needs to be like a polarity there.
Mhm.
Yeah.
You had a little bit more of like the Johnny Spike, not your name Johnny, but the card player archetypes
Right.
thing going on.
And people like they love rooting for the underdog, right?
Yeah.
So there were always more comments that were like, "Get him, Cracks! Like you're gonna take him out! Like I know you will. I believe in you." And yeah, because a lot of people can relate to that. More of us have been the guy who's losing the game than the guy who's winning the game before you
Yeah.
all out. We've all been there.
You got to take your licks before you actually, I don't even consider myself a great card player by any means, but when people are like, "Oh, you're so good," I'm like, for every game that I've won, I've probably like lost like a dozen collectively, like through playtesting. So before I showed up to an event or did something seriously,
Right.
and again, I have that little bit of like the Johnny mentality where it's like, if I'm going to win, it's going to be on my terms. I don't want to play the meta deck. I want to play the deck that counters the meta deck.
Right.
Which means I'm losing a bunch.
It happens to the best of us. But I think in those moments, you also learn a lot about your character because, I mean, when people aren't watching, you're like kind of testing your work ethic. And then when people are watching, you're testing your composure because, it's kind of when people are staring at you and you're like not trying to make a dumb play or misplay, as well as, you make it to the top cut and it's like win or go home. At that point, it's all about composure and making it into the next round. So I think there's like lots of teachable moments and gems throughout the entire process of getting ready for a tournament or even just playing at your local game store.
Definitely. I mean, like Ed, you mentioned it earlier, the decision tree. Whenever I'm in a professional setting or a serious competitive setting, that decision tree is where I try to keep my mind and like all emotions off. Like just look at the decision tree, and like if dude does something I didn't expect or whatever, he counters my spell or whatever it may be, it's like that's fine. Back to the decision tree, like don't get upset and try to do something, on a whim, because that's how you dig a hole for yourself real quick. That's like what a good card player wants. They want you to like slip and do something dumb, and then they're like, "Gotcha," And that was something I learned a lot, especially when I got into playing with you guys and we were testing a lot and practicing a lot. Was like just focus on the decision tree, just keep a clear eye on where this game can go.
Yeah, this is gonna sound so dorky. I remember, like, I think we're all sort of adapting to this post MetaZoo world. And again, for everybody that wasn't involved or didn't know, like at least the three people in this current chat were pretty deep in it as far as like competing and playing. It was a big part of our lives. And I think we've all, which is really great to see, is that we've all kind of grown out of that and found new things to do that are related to what we love about the TCG world and have been able to make a positive thing out of it. Which all that's to say, so this is like a really dorky, I feel weird saying this. I did a LinkedIn learning class a while back after all this, because again, I have more free time now. I don't know what I'm doing. It was on decision intelligence. And I was like, you know what? This is just playing cards. So you hear some, there's like some woman in a suit and it's like a 3-hour thing. And I'm like, I don't know why. I wanted the certificate to put on my LinkedIn. Okay, that's it. And it's funny, if you go there now, it's not even there because I think looking back on it, it's corny. But I was like, this is just like making the optimal plays, but in life. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that is a really good takeaway from that.
That's a great point, actually, and I wanna second that. I think actually a lot of things in life can be compared to card game playing or serious card game playing. There's so many metaphors for it. Like right now, an example is my brother and I are working on futures trading, like day trading strategies, and you would be amazed how many card strategies or mindsets translate over that. There's times I'm actually talking to him about his trades and comparing it to building a deck, and like, don't basically like commit to one strategy, don't like have a bunch of different ideas
Diversify.
have have one idea in the deck that you nailed, and the whole thing's committed to that. And in the same way, have one trade that you're committed to, you know, for that, maybe for that account. If you want to try something else, do it somewhere else. But like, you know, keep things clean and kind of sanitary when it comes to that type of thing, so that you can actually get good results and then make adjustments based on good results, you know.
Mhm.
And it's the same in the card world with building a deck and honing it for the tournament. You need those results, and you have to make those decisions based on your results, you know.
Hey, I mean, it's like TCG, the TCG player market chart a little bit.
Pretty much.
Yeah, right.
There is an economics to it all, you know. And well, I guess I don't want to go into financial advice world. We'll chat about that later, just because I'm curious. Tell me the plays, Moldy. What's optimal?
Don't ask me, man. I'm definitely not the guy you want to ask. I'm still figuring it out, bro.
Okay, well, I'll consult the Magic 8 Ball.
Yeah.
Hasn't failed me yet. So I wanted to talk a little bit about Nom Nom. I mean, I think now's a good time as any to really bring it up. I feel like you guys have just exploded and have captured a lot of this like hype and momentum. One thing I want to state too is like the format for Nom Nom, and again, I want you to pitch it as best as possible because
sure.
I'll butcher it, but having a it's a role-playing TCG, right? Or it's
TCRPG is what we're calling it.
Sorry, there you go.
You're good.
And,
You're good.
Yeah. And I think that's really unique because when I think about RPGs, and I think this is another thing people might not know about you, is you were doing some D&D stuff. I don't know if you still do, but I was thinking about that and how that sort of translates into some of your game design. And maybe you can sort of share that with us about how some of your you know, maybe creative influences have helped shape what you do for Nom Nom.
Yeah, absolutely. Let me start by saying that in terms of card games, I think Magic and Yu-Gi-Oh are like the best to look at, just in terms of they're different. You know, they have different mechanics going on, but both of them have like mastered what they're doing. You know, like in terms of the Magic formula, nobody really does it better than Magic. And in terms of the Yu-Gi-Oh formula, definitely nobody even does it close to as good as Yu-Gi-Oh.
I don't even know what Yu-Gi-Oh is. Just like they're like smoking crack, listening to heavy metal, and they say, "Hey, you like pain, brother?" And I'm like, "Yes,
Yes,
I
I
do."
do.
A large demographic says yes.
Yeah.
Exactly. But so I think that it was important to look at those games and see what they did right. And both of them, one of the things they did very right is language. It's you can always tell what's going on, and they're very consistent with their wording. They don't have multiple words that mean kind of the same thing. You know, discard is discard. Draw is draw. Place in your hand is place in your hand. You know, these are different things, and it's so important that they distinguish these. So that was an important thing for me, was just make sure that our language makes sense, but don't get too wordy. Try to keep it simple, which, because I think some Yu-Gi-Oh cards, let's be real, they get pretty intense. You're like, okay, paragraph 1, done.
You need a PhD. And that's the trade-off. To interrupt you, Yu-Gi-Oh cards, they do what they say they do. The problem is there's so much text on it because it's so like literal. Like it is read the card. It is read the card, and it does what it says, but it doesn't have the short text that Magic kind of does.
Yeah, like what was the one you just shared the other day? You were like, "I'm loving this card. You've been building decks with it," and it was just like,
oh yeah, Fluoneries and M-Pen, the big chunkin penguin who's a floodgate.
That's right.
Yeah, I love him.
Yeah. But yeah, I think that certain games have done a lot of things right, but we've all seen how many clones come out that are just essentially doing the same thing that Magic did, with maybe like one slight change. You know, like we're taking away the resource system. Now you pitch for resources, or you know, we're adding lanes, and now your placement matters. You know, there's things like that, but it's still essentially Magic, which honestly is, I'm not saying anything bad about it. It's a great formula. But when I was playing RPGs a lot, what I loved about it was the abstract thinking that they allow you to do. RPGs really let you sit there, especially something like D&D or Pathfinder or, you know, Numenera, and you just get to think like, what do I want to do right now? Like, what do I think my character would do, etc., or something like that, you know? And and it's so much fun. And it's funny because there's less direct strategy happening in D&D. There is strategy, but it's a lot of the fun role-playing gaming aspect. But it's just that creativity that I wanted to try to bring into the game a little bit. And so when we created Nom Nom, my goal was, how can we make a dungeon crawler TCG? Like, how do we take the concepts of a dungeon crawler game where you've got a party and you're leading the party through the dungeon, you're fighting monsters, gaining experience, leveling up, and how do we kind of like mix that with a card game? And so that was the goal with Nom Nom, and it took us a while to kind of hammer it out. But I feel like what we have right now is genuinely really unique, and that's one of the fun things about showing somebody the game is just being real. Most people kind of want me to say, so you've played Magic before, right? Cool. Then you're going to get this. And it's like,
Yeah.
not quite, not quite.
Right.
It's like, you really got to pay attention for a second, because it's like, if somebody's teaching you Monopoly or Risk for the first time, you're like, okay, like, I do what? I count up all my troops at the beginning of every turn. I divide it by 3, and then, you know what I mean? And it's like,
Mhm.
all this stuff that seems complex, but once you learn it and you get in the flow, it flows very nicely. So I kind of like sniped certain mechanics that I really liked in board games and certain mechanics I really liked in TCGs and tried to combine them here. And so what we ended up with is a game that is almost like a race between two players to see which player can either defeat the boss monster, who's the ruler of the dungeon, or they can defeat the opposing party with their monsters. So there's 2 ways to win. So you either take out the party or you take out the boss. And that's what really started to make me think, let's lean into the RPG thing here. Let's add experience points, let's give level ups, and give people a bit more of a broader decision tree rather than just what card am I going to play, but like, which direction am I going to move? Do I want to move forward, backward? How many spaces forward? Because you're moving across a dungeon, which is comprised of sector cards, and each sector has a certain amount of spaces in it that you move through, and it also has effects that are active in it. So as you move through the dungeon, each room is kind of different, and each player brings half the dungeon to the table. I bring 5 sectors, you bring 5 sectors, and then that's our dungeon. And it really creates some unique interactions where one of the things I hear, and I love hearing this, is people saying, I feel like the game tells a story every time I play it. And I'm like, that's cool, because that's what I'm going for with the RPG thing, is I want people to feel like they're related to these characters. If you've got one character facing down like 3 kaiju, and you've got this guy upgraded with, for instance, we've got a thing called Dino Blood. That's a mutation that pumps up all your
Mhm.
stats. And you can double up on Dino Blood and throw a long range weapon on there. And you start to picture this character like pumped up like
Goose.
with a giant weapon. You're like, dude, this guy's got this on lock. And then, maybe he does. Maybe the kaiju smash him into the ground. But it makes some really cool visual scenarios while you're playing.
That's
And
awesome.
That's awesome. Do you think with it being a RPG, was it, I mean, for me, I'm like, with most RPGs, you're playing with a party or a group of friends. Was it always intended to be player versus player, or is that like an additional add-on, like almost kind of like a commander or was it what's the speed,
like
like a
two-headed
speed
giant.
duel? Yeah.
Oh, speed duel. Okay, yeah. That's a good question, man. So yeah, when we were first designing the game, we realized this could go a lot of different directions. When you crack into other genres, new options appear. So yeah, definitely one of the things we talked about is cooperative play or 4-player games where you and another player are playing a 2-player team. Or for instance, another one we've come up with is like players versus enemy, where you and your friends play against one person who's superpowered and
Mm.
controls a lot of monsters and like maybe more than one boss.
Oh,
And
yeah.
so you guys have to take down this like superpower together. And that we haven't released like official format rules for that yet, but that's something that I'm actively working on, because I definitely think there is potential for multiplayer formats in various ways. And yeah, a player versus enemy or a player versus environment type thing where yeah, you can like team up with your friends cooperatively, and maybe somebody signs up to be the villain, and
Mhm.
yeah, that could be fun.
Here, I'm pitching you on this. What if y'all wrote like a book like Monster of the Week. Have you ever seen Monster of the Week? Or
Yeah.
I was gonna say like D&D, where you have the campaigns and you fight like
and each
the
story or
pre-built. Yeah.
chapter is a portion. It's like a different campaign or a different thing. Because that's how I got into RPGs. Was, you know, I'm an idiot, so I was like, oh, Monster of the Week, and then we used to get with all my friends in Utah on Sunday afternoons, and we'd play, and it got kind of chippy in there because one girl, she was, I guess the term is bleeding, like taking the real the what was happening in this session into real life, and I said screw her partner. She was dating somebody, and he got like teleported by the fairy person, like the king, and I said screw it. We got a mission. We got to save this little girl. Screw your partner. And he got transported. And she was mad at me. And she's like cussing me out during Friday Night Magic and everything. I'm like, what's going on here? I've never dealt with anybody like this. But she was mad because of that.
Oh, it's so funny, man. People take it real personal sometimes.
Oh,
and
yeah.
you're like, hey, I'm role playing. Okay. This isn't me.
Yeah. My character was the chosen one, so I'm just like, all right, you know, if I throw myself in a danger, I'll turn Super Saiyan. Like some cool stuff will happen. Like, and they're like, no, you idiot, you can ask questions. I'm like, no, F it, let's throw the spear.
Okay, we ball. Let's go.
We ball.
Yeah.
You know, I love those aspects of RPG, and one of the things that I'm working on right now, but this is a future project. This isn't something we're going to drop right now, but I'm working on actual role-playing rules so that the Nom Nom cards can be used in a role-playing setting, like a tabletop roll for action type of setting, but maybe you're using the cards for stats or for effects or things like that.
Okay, that's cool. Yeah, I think there's just that you definitely have a lot of directions you could go with it, and I think that's, if anything, that's kind of like a blessing and a curse though too, where it's like,
it is,
at least for me, I get like analysis paralysis sometimes when it comes to making decisions that are, when I know that the decision I make would impact a lot of other decisions. So, and
that was kind of why I insisted, like, let's focus on PvP first. Let's make a strong PvP, and then we can go from there, because we know that when it comes down to it, PvP is the most important. We have to have a really solid PvP, and then everything else can kind of fall into place with fan formats or official formats or whatever.
Yeah, and that's the thing too, is sometimes your community or your player base, they'll just take it and make it their own. There might be something you never thought. Like, I forget the term for it, but there's a word for it in the art world where it's like once you put something out, it's really no longer yours. Like the world sort of shapes it into the thing that they kind of want to be. So it'll be interesting to see how that sort of plays out.
And we're encouraging people also. We're not trying to keep control of this and say, like, you only play it our way and anything else is like contraband. You know, it's like, no, like, go for it. We love seeing what people come up with. We've already had people trying to mess around with other formats, you know. And we created, I might as well mention this, we created a point system to make sure we can stay competitive, like in terms of tournaments, because the average game length is about an hour. If you both know what you're doing, you can wrap up games in like 20 minutes. But if both players are kind of learning as they go, which is very common right now, games tend to last like an hour or an hour and a half. And for that, we created a point system. So we put an hour timer on the round, or 55 minutes on the round. And anytime that you take out the party member, you get a party KO, you get a player point for that game. And if you don't take out the boss or the opposing party by the end of the game, we'll tally up your player points and see who's leading by the end of that. So at the very least, you're encouraged to engage and go for the party, even if you don't think you could make it to the boss in time, you know?
Right.
Yeah,
that's a strategy too.
It is. Yeah. There's people who completely commit to going for the party KO, you know? I think the boss is the cleanest line of play. It's like you can take out the boss in less moves usually if you're smart and things go according to plan. But as we all know, things don't always go according to plan. So playing defensively and trying to, like, I always, you know, Bruce Lee fan here. So Jeet Kune Do, you know, like interrupt their attack with attack. The best defense is offense. That often works out really well in the game as well. It's just screw with the party. and they won't be able to do much.
Who to pivot a little bit, who would you say
Yeah.
is like your target audience for this? Because I'm getting a little like board game vibes. Like,
Yeah.
you know, I think there's competitive like store play for sure if that's what you want to do. But for me, like some of my favorite places to play games is at like the brewery.
Sure.
I can see myself
Yeah.
doing, you know, playing Nom Nom there. But
Oh yeah.
you kind of describe like who in your mind is kind of like, you know, your target audience approximately.
Yeah, sure. I think we're trying to net people from a few different audiences with this game design. So, what I would like ideally, I'd like for TCG players of all ages to look at the game and go, oh, it kind of looks like a TCG. I'd like to try that. But I'd also like RPG players and Warhammer players to look at the game and go, oh, it kind of looks like a strategy board game, tabletop strategy. I want to try that. And then when Warhammer and tabletop players who are used to, 10-hour games, like 1 week long games, when they hear, oh, it's a 1 hour experience, I think that they'll start coming in and trickling in more so. Because there's not a lot of games where you can jump into that kind of like movement strategy that only last, 30 minutes to an hour. Yeah.
Right.
Chess.
Music to my ears is that, a lot of card games, they don't really, solve the issues or maybe some of the qualms of the demographic that they're trying to attract. They're just like, okay, and they put a game out, which is cool, creatively, but as far as like understanding the market and how it fits in there, I think that's really good to hear.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, I think the tabletop RPG audience is massive. We all saw D&D explode in these last few years, and they're also very active. They call out Wizards of the Coast when they're doing something that they don't like. There was that whole debacle with copyright that like the D&D players won. They're a very passionate community, and I know it's difficult to kind of tease players into new games with cards and with board games. But if you do it right and you make something that they're going to enjoy, I think it's one of those things that will grow steadily, as long as you take care of it.
Those guys were like the most intense people at the card shop. Like they're in the corner with this like styrofoam like table, and it's like they have this like 10 by 10 massive cargo box with all their like figurines, and then they got the paint and the brushes, and then they're just like huddled up, and you're like, bro, you're intense, and you've been here since the ass crack of dawn, and you just left when the store ended, and I'm
and
like,
you're coming back tomorrow.
Yeah, you're coming back tomorrow, and you're doing this every day.
Yeah.
Or at least like 3 times a week.
Yeah. And that's something we want to encourage people as well with the gameplay. Since you are moving pieces on the board, we're going to allow people to bring their own painted figurines to tournaments, as long as it's standard size and it fits on a base. You can get bases that have numbers on them, so we would just ask people to use numbered bases so you know which piece is who. But I think that's another aspect people will have a lot of fun with. It's painting their own figure. We'll make figures. We'll make official figures for the game, but yeah, just giving people room to play around, and go like, this is my party, and these are my knobsters. It feels cool.
So we have we have talks about in-person play. Are we gonna have any in-person tournaments? Because we need something that's salacious that can spread over the web that people are gonna want. So are we breaking news now? We're gonna have a Nom Nom tournament at the last Collecticon of the year.
I wish I could say yes. We would love to do that. Right now, we're doing tournaments online, so on TTS, we're hosting tournaments on there and giving prizing, and we're gonna have one of the things I want to work on to politically like circle this question a little bit is
Perfect.
I want to talk to game stores and encourage game stores to really have a community. I think that's one of the things that slipped with these really big card games going more of the online corporate model, is the game stores get jack shit. They really don't get much. And I would like to have prize packs and unique items that encourage the game stores to have a player community, and then have us, even the team, show up at certain special events. That's like, hey, this store's event, we're going to be there. There's going to be a signing, and it's going to have official prizing. It's going to be a real tournament, and start with things like that, but build up to, I would love to do like a 10K tournament. I'd love to do something that had a nice fat nice fat prize. We won't go crazy here, but yeah, I think
We-
we learn from mistakes.
Yeah, we know that was
yeah.
last time.
Yeah, exactly.
Speaking of mistakes, is there anything that you guys have, any challenges that you've had that you have basically said, "Hey, look, here's what's going on. We need to overcome this." Like, what I'll say this, like, as a consumer, I don't really know what's going on from the developer standpoint, right? Like,
Mhm,
there's
mhm.
print schedules. There's, if you're, I don't know if you're working with China or not, but they've got the Chinese holidays. Like, there's so
Right.
many logistics that go on than just like, I think a lot of people don't think this way, but maybe there are some folks might just think, hey, making a game's easy. And maybe you just like design it. But again, when it comes to getting product in the hands of people and on time, like, can you kind of walk us
Yeah.
through that a little bit, like dispel any rumors or
Sure.
not even rumors, just your insights on it?
Yeah, sure. So we are printing all of our cards 100% in the U.S.
Oh,
We've released that printer. Their name's Rex 3. They're based in Florida. It's a great group of guys. They're a family-run printing business who's been in it for 4 generations, and they just do incredible work. And we approached them basically saying, "Hey, look, every card game we know outsources to China. They all do. It's just how it works." And just being honest, things are getting rough working with China. Like, not so much from a political standpoint. I know that's what it may sound like, but it's actually just paper prices are going up. They have different fees, kind of hidden fees that get tacked on when you work with a lot of these places. So you get quoted at a low price, but then, oh, something happened and either you had to pay an extra price or you got a product that was less quality than you expected because they just made a call and didn't tell you they were making a call on the
mhm.
production, quality. So that was frustrating for us. There are also a lot of delays shipping from there. Things have to go through customs more than once, and it just, yeah, it can. We've heard of other games losing shipments in customs or having shipments sit in customs for months to the point that the audience gets so upset, and you're just, it's problem after problem, like you said. So we thought, let's approach these American guys and see if they're willing to do it, and they were. And we do pay a little extra to get it done through them, but at the same time, if you calculate in the hidden fees, the shipping costs, the delays, it's actually kind of better. Um,
Mhm.
it's well worth it to make that switch, I think. And I'm hoping that we can encourage more uh, indie game companies to start to explore the American route, because I do think we have good printers who want to do good work within a reasonable price range. They just don't get asked. And one of the things that Rex told me was that they were impressed that I reached out personally because so many companies go through brokerage or, what do you call them? It's like a like
Finders.
services. Yeah, yeah, services that essentially find you. They're like, we know printing companies. You just wait. We'll hook it up for you. And then they go to the printing companies who they have deals with. And he was saying that you just get a better deal if you come straight to them like
Mhm.
this.
Sure. Yeah.
Ask them, of course, because there's no middleman. Um, so yeah, that was like, I didn't think that was anything groundbreaking, but we've heard that it's just like nobody was really trying that before.
Hmm.
And so we're hoping it's the start of something, and we plan to continue to do all of our cards in America. We'll see if we can get everything in America. I'm thinking when it comes to stuff like figurines, I don't know if we'll be able to do that in America. We'll see,
Yeah.
but we're going to do as much as we can because I think it's worth it to support the businesses. Um, Rex certainly promotes us because they're excited about the brand, and so it's a symbiotic relationship right now.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Yeah, so that was a big thing, production in America. And then also, I think another thing is just listening uh, to card audiences and really paying attention to what they're saying. And maybe not telling them, hey, I'm listening, I'll do whatever you want, but paying attention to what
Right.
they say and watching the chats and being like, okay, yeah, this is something that needs corrected or something that we can work on. Like one of our big things is not making too large of a roadmap up front. Um, we have a roadmap, and if you ask us, we're happy to tell you that, yeah, we're working on a comic book and we've got dreams about working on a video game, but no deadlines yet. We're not promising that anytime soon. And when we do it, we want to do it right.
Mm.
Like when Victor and I work on the Nom Nom comic, we'd like that to be able to maybe win an indie comic award or be on that level where it really competes with
Quality.
the other. Yeah,
Mhm.
high quality, really great art, and a pleasure to flip through. So that's our modus operandi right now. Is like, let's tell people what we're doing, promise what we're doing, and deliver on that. And then when we can do bigger things, and those are actually in production, we'll get people hyped on that too. But don't create big hype bubbles that pop.
Hmm.
It's
Yeah, I
like,
mean,
yeah,
what it just makes the fall hurt even worse, and
yeah,
then leaving people on red. These folks, they all want to be heard and listened to. And listen, if you've ever made anything before, like I haven't put things out to the same scale as making a big TCG or whatever, but anytime you hear feedback, like when like I'll design a web page for a client or whatever, and I've been doing this long enough to where it's like I've got thick skin. Just tell me what you want, we'll fix it, we'll
right,
do our best.
right,
But it is
yep,
hard in any creative endeavor, big or small, to sometimes hear feedback that's just like, this sucks, I hate it, I'm mad, I'm angry.
right, right,
But if you lead with empathy, you kind of understand, like, hey, look, yeah, they're being a little prickly right now, but they do care enough to say something.
exactly,
And like even with me on YouTube videos, if I don't like something, I'm like, I just will not say anything. But if somebody says something, at least I like to believe they, to some degree, they care. So I don't know.
yeah, yeah, definitely. And I like to believe also that they're paying attention, unless they've slipped over to the dark side where, like, even if you do something good, they won't recognize it.
Trolls,
Mo-
yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
most people are in that middle ground where if they're saying something, it's like you said, it's because they care. And if you show them that you're listening and you're paying attention and you care about them as well, then cool, like, level up. You guys just got a better relationship.
Mhm.
And that's something that we're trying to work on with our whole crowd, is go, look, we're not like, we're mortal. We can only do so much, and we're a team of, honestly, there's about four of us who do most of the work for the company. So all of us are wearing many hats, and we're all doing the best we can. So always speak your mind. If you want to reach out to one of us and let us know, we're here to listen. But at the same time, we're not going to sit here like a bunch of subs and just be like, oh yes, you're right, our game is awful, and yes, we should just
And
draft it.
I think that's the thing with the indie TCG crowd, is that they're super passionate, and with that level of passion comes I guess they become, and also the accessibility of, the creators and just the team in general. They almost become like a soundboard, or if they're disgruntled, you hear it times 10, where it's like, if it's Magic, they're in their ivory tower and nobody
Mhm.
knows, and they're just doing, another collab with somebody else. And if people hate it, suck it up, Buttercup. If people love
Right,
it, then cool, more money for us, better stock
right.
prices. So I think the indie TCG crowd is interesting. But um how do you see you all like transitioning? Do you feel like you want to transition out of the limelight eventually, or is it something where as long as you're doing good and doing right by the people, you'll forever stay in the kind of vantage point of them, like right in the views of them?
If possible, I'd like to stick to the latter. I think that's important for the company, for people to see that the people who made the company and are actively working on the product continue to pay attention to the people in the audience. Obviously, as things get busier and we need to hire more people and stuff like that, I'm sure the dynamic will change a bit, to where Tessa and I aren't running all of the Discord. Maybe we've got somebody in charge of social media and things like that. But we always want to make sure that we're appearing to the public and checking in and staying relevant with the game, just for assurance's sake, just so people can trust us and know that, like, we're here for the long haul. We're not just trying to get this machine in motion and then sit back,
Mhm.
because that it doesn't work like that with a startup. You can't get it in motion and sit back. You have to constantly work on it, and I think it helps if people see that you're working on it.
Yeah, trust is huge.
Yeah,
And coming out of this collective experience where some of that trust has maybe been foiled, that's there. People are predisposed to being a little skeptical, so they're, fool me once, shame on you. But I do think that's the thing that a lot of these indies, Kickstarters, the thing is, all these Kickstarters, indie TCGs, everything's existed prior to like the COVID boom, but having rug pull, I don't know, whatever, however you want to phrase it, having experienced some of the stuff recently, people are a little bit more sheepish now. So and it's not Nom Nom specific,
I understand.
all games. You're going up against what practices another company had done, and you might have that might not be you, but now it's like, okay, now we really have to double down on like being transparent about, if there's a delay, we just got to say, hey, there's a delay, not radio silence for months on end. You know what I mean?
Right.
So it's just a whole different approach.
No, totally. It's very important. It's very important because I think, to put it in a nutshell, I think one of the common, I don't want to call it mistakes, but slips, like one of the things that a lot of these games have done, or several of these indie games have done, that ends up hurting them in the end, is that hype bubble I mentioned earlier. And they tell you like, we're going to be the next big TCG, and we've never said that at Nom Nom. Not that we think we're just this minuscule thing that's going to disappear, but I think if we're being real, the way an indie game is going to succeed is by embracing itself as an indie game first and foremost, and then building that niche audience, inviting in those other audiences. Hey, board game players, come check this out. Hey, hardcore TCG players, come check it out. And building steadily and taking care of that audience. I think that's how you can succeed in the indie world. Is you got to establish that trust, and you have to show them, I'm paying attention to you guys. I'm not trying to get to the next audience. I'm not trying to get to the next demographic and give you a check mark and just move on. I think you have to be consistent and accept that you're starting on the small end of a very large spectrum of games, and you gotta work your way up steadily. And taking too big of one step can blow the whole thing. It can just blow the whole thing.
Yeah, sorry, I looked distracted there for a second. I had to pull this up to make
fine.
sure I got it right. But like, it's even like the way indie game studios used to work. I mean, maybe a little less so these days, but instead of saying like, "Oh, we're gonna be the next Mario," game studios, I'm talking video games. You look at a game like Shadow of the Colossus, massive game, like, or at least for me, massive game.
Amazing
Everybody
game.
loved it. Beautiful art, everything, but 4 years before they ever were able to make or do that, they released a tiny little game called Ico, and it's just like this artfully done game that's, it's one of those things that's like, it is what it is. It's just a kind of like a pure thing. And I think that's another way to look at like your approach. It's like, you're not creating a game with the plans to dump it or do anything with it, but it is like, it's your first step as a like game studio, which is a different thing than just like a game. Like you can make it an IP and all this other cool stuff, but it is, from a business standpoint, it's like nice to think about it as like a stepping stone for what could come down the road that would be even bigger and might be a part of that world, or so that's kind of how I think about it.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think one of the strengths with Nom Nom is the breadth and the depth of the world. Like Victor, it's been his baby since he was in high school. He's been creating things for Nom Nom for decades. And so my job initially when I came on board, as I was just a writer at first. Now I'm one of the founders and one of the main people helping Victor make decisions. But when I first came on, I was just a writer who wanted to see how many ideas he had. Because often when I get hired to help somebody with writing, that's my first foremost job, is how much do you have already? I don't even think you even know how much you have already. And you start to tease these things out of their heads, and the whole world just kind of starts to unravel on the floor. And you're like, oh my God, there's so much here. And that's what happened with Victor, was just like, okay, so you've got this world, and I see there's kaiju and there's dinosaurs. How does this all kind of work? And he has so many stories and so many characters and so many ideas already. It's richer than almost anything I've ever been a part of. And so that's what got me excited initially, was like, dude, this guy has major ideas and he has the art skills to back it all up. So let me help to clean up his language a little bit, help him with
Mhm.
the writing, the mechanics of writing stuff. And eventually what we were looking at was just so much. Like, that's why I suggested the TC RPG. It was a conversation we had about a year ago where there were a lot of indie games at the time. Grand Archive was going the NFT route. There were several games that were going the like digital marketplace, digital asset route. And I kind of had like a, a stick in the mud moment where I was like, guys, can we just ditch like the whole digital roadmap right now? Like, because we were talking about it and we were in talks with other companies to start moving in that direction. And I was like, I'm not saying we don't ever do it. Digital assets are certainly going to be a thing eventually, but like for now, can we just scratch that and just focus on making a cool game that nobody's ever played and go from there? And I think that was a smart decision for us. Like you said, Ed, you can get distracted. It's a curse and a blessing to have something that has so many options with the IP. And it was like, let's just commit to this,
Mhm.
do this right, and we're going to learn a lot as we're doing it, and then we'll be smarter to do whatever the next thing is.
Yeah.
Right, right. So at this point, do you ever like sit back and like, well, we're almost like, are you all like the first RPG? Like at this point, you've basically created your own vertical underneath the um trading card game vertical or umbrella. So I
Right.
mean, do you ever sit back and think, I guess at this point, like Ed, is there any, I don't think there's any other TCRPG. So you all are like the first. Do you ever sit back and like think about like, we actually created our own lane in a way, and yeah, yes, we can like see how other companies do certain things, and take the pluses and the minuses, take the pluses and not and learn from the minuses, but
Right.
like you did something pretty incredible here with creating this IP.
Dude, thank you. That means a lot to hear, because I do think about it, and not in a way that's like, oh man, we're so cool, we did such a cool thing, but it's exciting to know that we have a good product. Like, I'm an honest person. So if I worked on something for a long time and I wasn't really proud of it, you wouldn't see me here, talking about it, just being honest. But what we have is genuine, and I know I put a ton of work into it. And as a game player, I know that when other people play the game, start to experience it, they're going to get excited. My favorite thing is when I teach somebody the game and then they go off and they're playing with the community and they come back to me like a week later, and I had a couple people say this to me where they're like, hey, I just went back to my game store and I was playing Magic the other night, or I was playing Pokemon the other night, and it was boring because there wasn't any movement. And I was just like, oh, I kind of want to play Nom Nom again. And that is exactly what I'm looking for. I want people to go, man, that game was fun. And there's nothing really like it. I want to play that again. And and yeah, like creating the TCRPG thing, I did a bunch of research. Has anybody coined this term? Has anybody done it before? And no, there's games that have interacted and said, we're a TCG, and they have an RPG world or RPG themes, but it's never been fully put together to where it is RPG gameplay mechanics and TCG mechanics like actively working together in tandem. Because it's
Mhm.
really fun, like to level up your characters and you unlock abilities and stuff. It does at times, because I'm a Super Nintendo generation kid, grew up with all those SNES RPGs, like Ogre Battle and like these games that just the old strategy RPG games, and it does feel like that sometimes when you're moving your pieces and you're tracking your XP and stuff. Um, yeah, so it is something unique, and we're really proud of it. And I think when more people try it, it's going to emerge as more of a genre. I think we'll see other games starting to cross into this territory a little bit.
I've got one more question for you. This is a tough
Sure.
one. Are you ready?
Hit me, man.
If you could be any nomster, who would you be, or what would you be, and why?
That's tough. That is really tough.
This is going to affect the secondary market, right?
Yeah, I know, right? So I think the nomster I gotta go with right now is Power Porpoise, who is he's a kaiju porpoise, and he's where some kaiju kind of lose their minds and go a little mad, and that's why they attack the city. Power Porpoise just has always been obsessed with working out and exercising, and so he channels his anger into working out, and so he's hugely buff, and he's got like huge pecs and like these big buns, and he's basically just like a thick, with two C's, porpoise, who just is totally cocky about his body and who he is, and it's very different from who I am. So I think I kind of look up to Power Porpoise a little bit.
Got some Captain Falcon energy, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, for sure.
Show me your moves.
Falcon, charge.
All right. So how can folks find you? Where want to plug your socials, website?
For sure. Thank you. You can find me personally at Moldy Potions on Instagram. You can also find the World of Nom Nom at World of Nom Nom on Instagram. We also have a website, worldofnomnom.com, where we drop merch and different. Right now, actually, we just dropped our last sample card packs up there. So you missed that drop, but you'll see them on the secondary market. And those are our final like prototype cards for people to check out. So yeah, worldofnomnom.com, World of Nom Nom on Instagram, and go follow Victor too at Senpai Slick, because he's got some amazing art for you guys to check out.
Most definitely. All right. Well, Moldy, I appreciate you joining us here on Stacking the Deck, or I appreciate you stacking the deck with us.
Yeah, stacking.
That's the tagline. So
that's the tagline. Hey, it was so fun to stack the deck with you guys. Honestly, I'd be happy to come back sometime. This flew by, so I had a good time.